What's up, everybody? You are watching On the Town with Tanya, and I'm your host. Thank you very much for coming back with us again this week. We appreciate you. This week, we're waiting for our co-host to come on, Richard Adamson II. He'll be with us shortly. So if you hear something, that's who it is. And so today's guest is with us because, there's a lot of talk of immigration and, a lot of the stuff that we see on the media, in my opinion, is just propaganda, just things that create fear for us, I believe. That's just my personal opinion. And so, every time you hear about an immigrant on TV, it's like they did this, they did a robbery, they did this, a crime or something. And it's just creating more and more anxiety. So what I say to you is never believe that. And remember something, all immigrants technically. So if you remember that part, you'll be fine and stop judging people and creating these false narratives about groups of people, because it's just horrible. I think everyone has a divine purpose. And today's guest has over 10 years of therapy experience. She received her degree in social work from NYU. She's a board certified behavior analyst, and she also ran for county executive in Yonkers. Her family immigrated here from the United States from India when she was about 8 years old, after her father was tragically killed by a suicide bomber. She is a pillar in her community and a testimony to what anyone can do if they have freedom, peace, and opportunity. Please welcome Christine Peters. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me, Tanya.
Thank you so much for being our guest. I really appreciate you. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I can every day I wake above ground is I'm fantastic. That's how
Yeah,
it goes. Yeah,
yes.
because it's not promised to us. So you have a very unusual story, and I thank you so much for being with us today, because to me sharing is caring, and so a lot of people need to hear more stories and various stories to not make judgments and stereotypes of not for us not to hear those things so much. I like to hear more of the good stories, and you're just a great story for one reason. You're social work. You did social work, which means you obviously give a lot to people, and that in itself, to me, is enough for me to have somebody as my guest, because they give. They're a giver, and they're trying their best to take the tools that they have to help other people learn to use those tools to help themselves through. So thank you. I really appreciate you. Take us through to when you first came here, and the circumstances in which you came here under.
So my uncle had come here as, sort of like an immigrant. He came and became a pharmacist, and then he married my aunt, and they sort of sponsored our whole entire family to come here.
Okay.
So we were pretty much ready to come here, and then my father was politically involved, and he went to a political rally. And actually, that was when the Prime Minister of India at the time, Rajiv Gandhi, was assassinated. So my father was in the crowd, just sort of attending, and he was then killed at that rally because he
Uh,
had suffered some injuries from that suicide bomber's bomb. And so we sort of had to like pivot a little bit. We had to move the date that we were coming here. We moved it a little bit, and then we finally came here at the end of July, early August. And once we came here, we sort of settled in Yonkers, New York.
right. Oh, Yonkers. Okay, right here local. Well, 8 years old, but how? I mean, now that's two things that you have to deal with. So you're moving, and then you're dealing with not having your dad. I'm sure that must be a double. I mean, both of them are as tragic as it can be. But your dad, and you're moving to a new environment, a whole nother side of the world, basically. How did you? How did that make you feel, or do you remember those days, or not really?
I do remember. I remember sort of coming from a country where I was part of the majority to a country where I was very much a minority.
Mm.
And so, and at the time, the only thing I'd really experienced was Yonkers, New York, right? So, as diverse as Yonkers was, I don't necessarily think I had as much interaction with the Indian community at the time because there weren't
Mhm.
really that many of us. In
Oh,
school, there was a sprinkling of like other Indian kids, right? And it was sort of like the Indian subcontinent. So, there was Pakistani kids, there was, like kids from Sri Lanka or India. So I think all together there was maybe like four or five of us within my grade. And
oh, wow.
so we didn't really get to talk about our culture so much. So
Hmm.
sort of like learning how to assimilate into the sort of United States culture, this urban culture was very different for me. I remember sort of not fully understanding what
Hmm.
exactly that loss was, because in India, you're very sheltered when you're a child. Nobody really talks about sort of like death or any of those things, much less terrorism. So
Right.
I remember sort of not fully understanding and then coming to this new country. My housing was completely topsy-turvy. We had to find an apartment. We had no real clothes. We weren't prepared for the cold weather because I'm
Uh,
from Southern India where it's blazing hot all the time, and it's pretty hot for there's no snow. So I
right.
remember coming here, I was super excited to sort of see the snow. And once I experienced the snow,
Right.
I don't know that I was so excited anymore.
Uh,
Cool to play in the snow for a little bit, but it was just one of these things where I sort of like got to experience something different. But that all being said, it was a completely different world. It was almost like the exact opposite of what I'd been used to for the first 8 years of my life.
right. Right. I can imagine. I mean, looking back now that you mentioned that, I remember what our neighborhood when I was growing up in my foster family. That I'm trying to think of like who do I know that was Indian? My friend Rashida, and I think that was no. We had two families, I think, two or three, maybe at the most.
Maybe.
And now looking back, I'm like, wow, that was really new and exciting at that time. You don't think about it because you were kids and we played, we didn't care. We had all kinds of friends, so we didn't care. But looking back, I'm like, wait a minute, that was really phenomenal. Because
Right.
different.
Right. And then there's like these sort of like minute sort of differences between, like the West Indian versus like the East Indian, but it sort of all plays out to some extent, right? And even in the simplest things within your culture, like our food is so different,
Wow.
and when if you grow up here in the United States, you're just like, what do you mean you're eating with your hands? But in India, you eat with your hands. It's just what's sort of anticipated and expected. And
Right.
so even having friends come over and seeing me eat with my hands, my friends were great at the time. I'm still friends with a lot of my friends from when I was younger. So then
Right.
they also tried to eat with their hands and they tried to help me feel more comfortable. But I just remember it was such a difference in the culture. And
Yes.
adjusting to that was so significant, and adjusting to like what is polite society? What are the rules and regulations around sort of, like in India, we ask to use the restroom, right? Whereas my friends' parents would be like, you're annoying already. Just go. Just if you have to go, just go. And me feeling so uncomfortable because I was trained a certain way and I almost felt disrespectful. And, everybody was auntie and uncle there, right? And I'm coming here to my friends' parents. They're telling me, oh, call me by my first name.
Right.
It was just such an interesting sort of
Wow.
contrast.
I would love to see a movie on the young 8-year-old girl coming here, and those experiences. I think it would be actually phenomenal because I mean I think of all my friends who told me stories when they came, and here's the comparison. So being a foster kid when you first come in, imagine you being taken away from your mom and dad or whoever just boom, bye, gotta go, never see them again. That's the same feeling I'm sure someone feels when they get plopped in another country with nothing and nobody to back them up, nobody except for maybe you might get lucky and have one person. I had two of my siblings, well, first three, and then one sibling. So, but that's all I had. You know what I'm saying? So I understand in my eyes, it's very similar to someone that just came here, like, oh no, well, what is this and what do I got to do? And you
Right.
know,
Right.
yeah,
You don't have like a
well,
safe base,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Well, how did you get through the emotional part, the emotional trauma part as an 8-year-old? Like, what did you go to therapy, or did your family just work you through it, or how did you get to losing your dad? Because that to me is oh, he'll be back. Sorry about that, guys. That's Rich. He'll be back. That to me is like a whole nother level of yeah, trauma. It is trauma, I would think, because you're not expecting it. It's not like he was sick and you got time to prepare yourself mentally in your head. Just out of the blue, boom, I went to go and you know help someone technically because protesting it to me is helping in its way. And then you're not there no more. How did you make that adjustment?
I don't know that my family necessarily knew how to do that. I think it was sort of like a shared family trauma in multiple layers, right? My
Mhm.
mom went from having a partner to all of a sudden being a single mother in this brand new country, not understanding these systems. She
Right.
certainly didn't know anything about therapy or how to get me any of that. She herself didn't get any of that. And then she sort of had to come here and learn how to navigate the system, get a job where none of her skill set mattered.
Mhm.
And I think it was one of these things where we were all in survival mode, right? So this sort of emotional struggle and the loss, I think, was just at the bottom of the pile of things to
Mhm.
address when even just putting food on the table was such a stressful sort of situation.
Right, right.
Came
Wow.
from
Well, how many siblings do you have?
So I have an older brother. He's about 9 years older than me.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh.
he came, well, so my mom was married before my dad, and so he was the product of that marriage. And so, but all he had ever known and all I'd ever known was that we
Mhm.
were siblings. So he came here and he actually started working very early on, right? So in India, he wasn't working, but once he came here, because
Right.
there were so many financial stressors, he got a job. He worked at McDonald's, and it was sort of like one of these things where we're like, yes, McDonald's, because then we wouldn't get McDonald's, right? Because it was
I was
like,
gonna
oh,
say, that's like
there's
the food is stable.
money,
Yeah.
money. So he would sometimes bring home McDonald's, and so it was a treat for me. So
Oh.
it's very exciting that he worked there. But sometimes we talk about some of the struggles that he went through because
Mhm.
we were sort of like a newer wave of immigrants. People treated him really unkindly, and so he had a lot of his struggles too while he was going to school. And in
Mhm.
school, people were awful to my brother. Like, he got beat up a lot. He actually wound up
Right.
dropping out because it was such a difficult sort of scenario, and he was really sort of tortured, I would say.
Yeah, that breaks my heart. And I look back now and think about all my friends who did get tortured. Yeah. That was one. Anybody that immigrated usually. I have one who was able to ride it out because he was like a tough cookie. And so luckily, thank God his sister never had to deal with much, because people, once they saw what he was about, they were like, I don't think I want to mess with this kid. We're gonna
Right.
just leave him alone. And he became one of the guys. So I think it helped. But hi, Rich. We want to say hi to our co-host, Rich Adamson, the second. Thank
Hey,
you for joining us. How are you? I guess you can
good, good.
chime in and ask a question if you'd like. Um,
Well, yeah, can you
can you
guys
hear me?
hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's an honor to be on the show with my sister. Me and her been talking about this for a long time, so that's why I'm like grinning from ear to ear. But yeah, it breaks my heart that my brother went through that because I was picked on as a kid, for being different, for my family being religious, things of that nature. And I just don't think that adults, especially back then, I just don't think they did enough to protect children who go through that. I mean, I know, like, I was born here and I wasn't protected, so I could only imagine what it was like, you know, um, for Christine, and our brother. You know what I mean? I could only imagine because, like I said, I was born here and went through that. I would beg the teachers, "Don't send me over here, please." And Richard, stop it, you over exaggerating. Then next thing you know, I'll be bleeding or something like that, and they're scared of getting sued because my parents are going to come to the school. And so, when I got acquainted with my sister Christine and she told me a lot of her story, um, I was like, it hit home because I could somewhat identify. But I'm just imagining what it was like for her and the family and mom and everybody, like how they just dealt with that. I mean, that takes a different level of perseverance, and that's why I admire my sister so much, Christine. Like, she's one of the main people who made me want to become a social worker. You know what I mean? Because, like, her heart's really in it. And I wanted to ask her this question, right? I always see like the strong side of my sister. You know what I mean? Like, when I'm going through something, she's always there. Like, she's like, "You want me to turn into Anita? You want me to do? You want me to?" But was there ever a time, sis, that, like, you were like, can I do this? Can I, you know what I mean? Can I, like, I don't want to do this. I want to give up, or, because I've never seen quit in you. In fact, you and Tanya are a lot alike because, Tanya's one that's had my back too. There's stuff I don't even want to tell Tanya because I'm like, she might come down here. You know what I mean? But everybody says, Rich, you're the boxer, but your sisters are scarier than you. But was there ever a time, because like I said, I've only seen you be strong, which is amazing to me. You know what I mean? That's why I always loved you, and you were always inspirational. But was there ever a time when you was like, I don't want to do this, I want to give up? I don't mean like not live, but I mean like everything you've accomplished.
I think there were different moments up until probably college and even
Hmm.
probably through college, where I don't know that I necessarily was like, do I want to give up? I kind of questioned, why am I here? Right. Where it just seemed like there was
Hmm.
just all of these struggles and so many stressors. And it
Yeah.
kind of felt like God created all these hurdles for me. And,
Mm,
I was very sort of like God fearing. I was raised very Catholic, and every night we prayed, we said the rosary, we prayed as a family. And so I think my sort of biggest struggle with that was almost feeling like God had abandoned me, right? So, and especially in middle school, like now as an adult, I look back and I think, oh my God, middle school, it's sort of some of the hardest years for everybody. And if they did not have a difficult time in middle school, God bless them, right? Because everybody I know, everybody had a
mhm,
difficult time in middle school because it's just kind of like awkward. You're kind of coming into yourself.
mhm.
But I think I just felt very much alone, and I felt like I was the only person going through any kind of struggles. And I remember sort of coming to terms with so many different things at the time, because we finally were in a place where we weren't worried about, are we going to have food? We had, like sort of our shelter figured out. We didn't have issues with like the Con Ed being turned off or whatever. And it was a good place where, like our in our needs hierarchy, like all of the basic needs were met. So now we could think about our emotional needs and stuff. So I think, started sort of questioning then. And then I remember
Mhm.
also, because and this sort of started in middle school and went throughout, I think, high school and college even, where I just
Mhm.
didn't understand where I fit into the role even amongst my peers, right? Because as much as Yonkers was diverse back then, it was diverse, but I didn't really understand, like, it was sort of like all the boys liked the white girls, or they liked the Latina girls, or all the black boys liked all the black girls or the Latina girls. So it was kind of like,
Yes,
where do I fit?
true.
And it was like, oh, well, maybe I'm not pretty, or maybe I'm too smart, or maybe I'm too weird, or maybe whatever. You don't know what the answer is. So you sort of
Right.
internalize it, and you just sort of feel different and othered, and not enough, or not good enough, or just not fit, right? So I think a lot of that made me just sort of wonder, why did we even do this?
Right.
I was in a country where I looked like everybody else. And so I think for a long time I sort of questioned, like, I knew I was like quote unquote smart, but
Right.
it almost seemed like that was my only strength, right? Because I was sort of in school, I would get good grades. And then sort of going to college, once I saw more young Indian women, and I saw, like I remember I had a friend one time, and I was telling her, yeah, I'm kind of weird. I have this dish. So she was from the same like state in India that I'm from. Yeah. So then I was like, yeah, I have this thing. And she's like, what is it? I was like, oh, I eat like sour cream and rice. She's like, oh, thanks, Adam. And I was like, oh my goodness. And it was for the first time I felt validated that somebody else ate this
Mm,
like weird concoction of food that I ate, but it's delicious to me. So I grew up
right.
eating it.
Oh,
And so it was just so sort of validating. And at that point, I think I started sort of questioning and sort of realizing, what, maybe there is something more, and the world is bigger than just the world that I knew, you know?
right. Right.
Hmm.
Wow. And what now, did your background inspire you to become a therapist?
Um, so my dad passing away, I was also sexually assaulted as a child. And
Okay.
then, the move here, sort of feeling like I was really very different. But, growing up, a lot of people just sort of talked to me, and they felt comfortable and safe with me. So I sort of always thought about how I should become a therapist. Mostly because I was like, well, people talk to me anyway. I might as well make some money out of this because this is who I'm going to be for the rest of my life, you know? And then
Okay.
the more I was in college, so I actually was a creative writing major in undergrad because I
Oh,
wanted
really?
to write books. Yeah, I wanted to write books and I wanted to write poetry. So I wrote poetry mostly, but I wanted to write stories. And I really liked other people's stories. You know, I liked because so many people talked to me and I would ask questions. I really sort of got to understand them sort of very intimately, and I
Mhm.
always wanted to capture their stories, you know.
Mhm.
So I was a creative writing major, but I don't know, you know, ever since I was very little, I sort of wanted to work to help people feel less unhappy. I feel like a lot of times people talk to me either when they were unhappy or they had a lot of stressors and they were sad.
Mhm.
So I wanted to sort of be an agent for a change, to sort of show them that there's so much beauty in this world if you just
Right.
sort of hold on for a little bit longer, and maybe we can discover the beauty together, if that makes any sense.
That is
Absolutely.
brilliant. That's what I'm talking about. I mean,
Uh,
you must be an awesome therapist because being that you have so many backgrounds to pull from, I think that that makes for a better therapist because now it's not just the books that you've learned, but it's life experience. And when you have that feeling of being either a victim or being in a place of not power because you're too young or whatever, that is so powerful to help someone else because you can get and you can understand, how they're really feeling. Most people say they understand, but they don't really know. They don't really.
Right.
I don't think they really understand.
right.
They give you the book
Yeah.
says, what is it? The code for this is such and such. All right, and that's it. You're like, okay, the
Yeah.
DSM-5 is not for everything, okay? But
Right.
that's what'll happen. So when you have experience, I just I don't know. I went through a lot of therapy because I was a foster kid, I was abused as a kid. A lot of stuff went on. So I've done over 30 years of therapy. I call myself the therapist pro at this point. And I knew right away, every time I hit one, and it was only a few, I knew right away the connection was way different. It was real therapy then.
Yeah.
Before I was
Mhm.
giving you blah, blah, Tanya talking. But when I really got down to the real work of like,
Yeah.
okay, let's peel this onion layer right now and get the cold water ready because we're gonna need it. When you
Yeah.
get to that part, that's when you get
Yeah.
to the truth, and that's when you really start therapy. But I knew the other therapists, in my opinion, they didn't seem like they were. I can't explain it. I was just a part of their book to them. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like I can't explain it to you. I don't know how I pegged it, but the three that I ended up bonding with later on, I found out I was right. They had personal stories that they didn't want to share at the time for obvious reasons, but I knew it. I knew something was different about how they were questioning me. Instead of like the Gestapo, it was more like in a concern and in a healing way.
Mhm.
You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So,
Mhm.
I don't know, but Rich,
Yeah. And
what do you have?
I think listening to Christine, Christine had, we're family, so we've had many conversations. But listening to both of you, I think what I noticed about both of you is that um people can know the theories about therapists. I actually teach the theories in drug counseling and all that, right? But it's different when it's good to take the theories, it's good to take the book knowledge, right? But when your
Mhm.
person is in it, like what I noticed about Christine is that her person, her inner self is in it. Like it's just like a person who works in the medical field. Your mind has to be, as Peter Tosh said, your mind has to be in the medicine for it to really work. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, like it's one thing to be a doctor, but it's one thing to be in touch with humanity. It's another thing to be in
Mhm.
touch with humanity. And that's what I
Mhm.
noticed about like Christine. Like when we were when we were first listening to my music, I think she discovered that I needed therapy, right? So because she was able to tell me what all of the songs meant, like, and I was like, I wasn't used to that. Like most people had to decode my songs, but I noticed
Mhm.
that, much like you, Tanya, Christine had a way of looking into people, but not looking into people with
Right.
judgment or motive. But it's like, oh my gosh, he knows. Like I don't. Okay, so even though I'm an African American man who's been taught to cover up everything, I could actually bare my soul, or I could actually be human. Like what a breath of fresh air. That's why I used to write my songs in code, because I was taught don't give everybody too much, or they'll see you as weak and treat you that way.
Mm.
But I also think, and Christine, you tell me if you agree or disagree. But what I noticed about you, Christine, is that I think your poetic bone, if that's a good analogy, I think that intertwined with your ability to be a therapist, because some people like to write and then some people see the poetry in life. I think you're a person that sees the poetry in life, because that's from seeing you deal with people. That's kind of how you deal with people. You find the uniqueness and the story within them. And that mesmerized me. But I think the poet in you is what helps you be great at what you do. Would you, am I right? Or am I saying it wrong?
I think the poetry is sort of my way of analyzing the world and myself and my thoughts and my feelings. I don't know that I'm somebody that just sort of sits down and like journals, like Dear Diary, today,
Mhm.
I'm not one of those people, honestly.
Right, right.
Um, I sort of think in a more macro way, and I think the poetry was me analyzing system, society, my internal hurt, my external sort of footprint on the world,
Hmm.
and what is that going to be, and sort of the world's imprint upon me, right? So
Hmm.
um, my poetry is something, it's really the most vulnerable place into my mind. It's sort of like this microscope or telescope into my mind, where I'm not somebody that very much shares. Like if somebody's like, well, how was this traumatic experience for you? I'm like, it was traumatic. Like I don't, you
Okay.
know. But if you read my poetry, or if
Yeah.
Right.
you hear it, so I have a website and
I
I
was gonna say,
read.
where's the website?
Yeah, we
Um,
want to.
it's
Sorry, go ahead.
Christine. I think it's ChristinePetersPoetry.com. And so it has some of my poems, and I'm reading them out loud, and a couple of them have videos that go along with it. But it really is one of these things where you sort of experience it, and it's very dark, right? So for most people who meet me, they'll tell you,
Mhm.
Christine is so much fun, she's lively, I'm happy most of the time, and I am. But the
Uh-huh.
poetry is very sort of it's a little bit dark. Some of it is a little bit dark, but it's very introspective, and I don't necessarily think it's dark per se. I think to other people, if they know me, it's dark, but I think it's just very analytical, and it
Mhm.
analyzes society, and it speaks to the experience of being a woman. It speaks to the experience of being an immigrant. It speaks to the experience of feeling pressured. It speaks
Right.
to like being sexually assaulted. It speaks to all the different roles and intersectionality and what that is within my experience. And so that's what my poetry is, and I think it does help me sort of look at other people, because there are things that are like lines within my poems that come up actually in sessions, and I'm like, oh, I understand exactly what this is. So then I can sort of ask deeper questions to understand the other person's experience. And what I will say is, I don't know that I'm, if it's just me, but I know there's a saying that, you know, like people who are therapists are wounded healers, right? So a lot of people who are very wounded in their younger years become healers as they get older, because they realize that helps heal them.
Yes.
And you know what? I wanted
Yes.
to ask you about that too, because I've heard a lot of your poems. I was actually going to ask you to recite one in this interview if you wanted to, but I don't want to get in trouble if you don't want
Yes.
to.
Yes.
So yeah, but yeah, that's how I saw your poetry. I never saw your poetry as dark. I saw it as analytical, and in I always heard in your spirit, Christine, that you were not afraid to have the conversations that a lot of people avoid. And so in your poetry, that's what I heard. I heard like,
Mhm.
hey, yes, I'm Christine, I'm this beautiful lady with long hair and a nice smile, but I want to have these conversations that people might find difficult, and that's why I wanted to also ask about your political career. I remember when you started it.
Mhm.
I literally saw the public's reaction to you. And I was like, I saw reality and I saw hope, but then I also saw fear. And what I wanted to ask you, I've always wanted to ask you this. I don't know if did you see that some people feared you, and if you did, why did they? I think I know, but who am I? I think you would know better than I would. But I saw, because you came on the scene with this brightness and these brilliant ideas and everything, and I saw some people like, wow, yeah, we want her. Like when people found out that you and I were kin, they were like, oh, that's just, oh yeah. And then I saw some people who are the more powerful in our society. I saw fear, and I was like, I just watched, but I have my own ideas about why they were afraid. But if you noticed it, I want to ask you, why do you think they were afraid? If I'm right,
Well,
if I'm right about them being afraid.
I
Sorry.
think that some people had some difficulty in sort of tolerating me getting into that position because, quite frankly, I think politics is one of these things, right? It's all about negotiation. It's about like interpersonal relationships and all of these things. But sometimes people who are in positions of power, they believe in controlling and they believe in like equations. And I'm not somebody that falls into that equation very easily, right? Because I'm quite independent. I've worked extremely hard to get to a place where fiscally I'm independent of most other people. I rely on myself. And so there's not too much that anybody can offer me to get me to vote one way or another. So I would in fact be responsible specifically and only to the constituency, right? So that being said, I'm also somebody that takes into account like studies and different things, and like and thinks about, well, what would be the long-term sort of cost versus the short-term cost. And I'm really not somebody that somebody can like take out to lunch and be like, you know what, Christine, like I can offer you this money if you'll vote this way, because I don't, that's not what my soul wants. And so I sort of am like responsible to, and I care about something higher than just like sort of like the luxuries that are momentary. And I think that's one of the strengths that I've gained over the years, is that for me, everything, including pain, is situational and temporary, right? But my soul and my life and my legacy and what and now at this point in the past 10 years, what I model for my daughter or the rest of the young people out there who are growing up is more important to me than any temporary satisfaction I may sort of experience, or any temporary pain actually too.
That is brilliant. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, what made you decide that you wanted to even run to get in the arena? Did you see things that you wanted to be the change that you wanted to see?
Right. So, even from a young age, before when I was around in college, I always sort of thought, well, the legislation, like the policies, the laws control our whole entire life, right? So everything sort of falls into, at one time, I sort of questioned whether I should become an attorney or not. And I was thinking about becoming a lawyer. But I really saw it as sort of like the sort of like the margins that we have to fall within is designed by the laws. And if we want to create a more equitable society, or a society that's more responsive to the needs of its citizens, we have to start by changing the laws, or sort of like amending them, or in introducing new laws or introducing new perspectives to the lawmakers. So I actually ran for county legislator on that level because they made the legislation and they got to sort of make a larger impact on Westchester. Even though I would have been 1 out of 17, I could get other people to sort of buy into something that I cared about. And I've actually been pretty good about, regardless of which side of the aisle someone is on, being able to explain my point of view and getting them to understand why it's so important, and understanding their perspective and finding middle ground. So I thought it would be something that I would be a good fit for, and that's why I ran.
Wow, that's amazing. That takes a lot of courage, especially in this day and age. But that's how it has to go now in politics. If you see something you don't like, you literally will have to be the change. There's no other way you're going to get at this point. And you keep going until you get what you get. I saw Andre Rainey win in Peekskill. That was not miracle, but a miracle technically. I saw someone else recently. I've seen quite a few different things going on in politics in Westchester, and it's because there were people who said, you know what, I'm going to get in here and I'm going to roll up my sleeve. You know, I wish I had it in me. I'd do it, but I don't have it. I don't have that. So you need extra to get to do that, and I'd rather spend time writing screenplays, quite frankly, or interviewing people. That's what I love doing more. So anyway, but so what are you up to now? What are you doing now? Therapy, and I saw a few things, but what exactly are you doing now?
So now I do therapy. I do outpatient therapy. I'm raising my daughter. I'm a single parent, so I'm raising her, and I'm hoping that, I raise a healthy, happy adult. And if I don't, I'll have to work extra and pay for that therapy too. And I, I have a small business that, I'm the sole proprietor. So I'm trying to sort of figure out what I'm going to be doing with that. I continue to write poetry. I'm writing a book that I started writing a book. It's very, very early on. And so when I have free time, which is very, very little bit of free time. And yeah, I'm sort of considering my options for running for office, in the next couple of years, and see what comes of that.
I think that'll be good, because if your gut told you to do it the first time, that means you were meant to do it. So if you don't want this the first time, try again. And next time you'll just work harder at getting all those people who didn't go out and vote to get in the vote. That's the catch. That's the catch. But I would like to, either, if you don't want to say one of your poems, I pulled up your site and I can play one.
Sure. Let me think of a poem that might be appropriate, because that's
okay.
You see, I'm getting excited.
Traumatize everybody that's listening.
Okay. I would have been pressing the button, not knowing what I was getting into. YouTube's famous for citing me for something, so they were like, "Look at you."
So one of my favorite poems is this Little White Lies poem. I wrote it in college, but then there's this other poem. What?
I said I remember it.
You remember?
Yes. So, I mean, any of the poems except for that one all the way at the bottom, that's all the way in black. Any of the other poems are mostly fine.
Like memory?
There's a little bit of cursing in a couple of them. I forget which one. But there's one where it's like bursting at the seams. I think they're kind of provocative, the poems, But you can.
All right. How provocative? Because I didn't put a warning.
I think, you know what, the Little White Lies poem doesn't have any curses in it. I don't think.
Okay. Yeah. So let's listen in, guys, and see. Let's see if it has any curses in it. Ready? Let's see. Hopefully this will sound good. Let's see. Okay, ready?
White robes and a golden cross, a holy book which left me lost. Trained politicians spreading words of wisdom. To get to heaven, you must obey the system. White lights bring truth, believe what we say. Yes, God created you everyone, but it's unacceptable to be gay. The purity of the sacraments and sins are washed away. So why are we left sinners striving for heaven every single day? Picture this, a little girl in a white communion dress. As she grew older, her curiosity was suppressed. For who would question the great God Almighty? Imagine a simple little innocent girl like me. If you're all-knowing, how could you create this impure race, only to set us on a path to achieving an unattainable grace? So many minds lost within the little white lies, trying to find answers to what happens when we die, striving to avoid an unimaginable punishment. But Father of pure love, why would you allow me to suffer this torment? I thought I was your child, regardless of good, bad, or any other. Who do I turn to now? I'm a flawed child, and so is my brother. I live in this world where we bring down one another, the sins of society reflected even in my angelic mother. A family of woes to close heaven's gates, starting with Eve who sealed our destined fates. What else must I answer for, the sins of life's past? Or will I see the light of salvation at long last? I'm your child, so Lord, please tell me, what path do I follow? For if I should die today, can I see the graces of heaven tomorrow? Do I have to wait in the line of purgatory? Or can you find a way to somehow forgive me? You promised me beauty and everyone dear, but the only image of heaven I see is fear.
Wow. Wow. That's deep.
Wow.
That's
When I tell
really
you,
good poem.
well, let me let you
Really
talk,
good.
Christine. Sorry, 'cause you just you know how your poems, you know.
Wow.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was at a time where one of my best friends came out, and it was just sort of like me questioning, right? I told you a lot of my sort of processes are internal, and I don't write out my journals, but that was sort of my processing of this is what I was taught my whole life, and I still love God, but how do I make sense of this because I love my friend, and I just didn't understand the discrepancy between the love that God teaches and sort of like the hate that is taught based upon, to me at the time, religion, right? So really
Mhm.
that poem Little White Lies was about organized religion, and how it really, for me, taught me more about sort of like um just sort of like discrimination almost, and like
Mhm.
not being loving and supportive and accepting of our brothers and sisters. And so it was really me questioning religion.
Right. Oh,
Yeah, I
wow.
immediately picked it up. Like when I first heard it, I just the poem for me, it made me think about like why are people so cruel and mean, right? That's what you know what I'm saying? Because I grew up in a religious family, and Christine was there when I transitioned from musician, conscious rap artist with this message to minister. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
But I when my cousin was brutally shot down in Westchester County by some gangbangers, um, Christine was the only one that was there for me at the time. Like people that I did music with, people that I helped them get jobs, people that I helped them get records made and stuff like that. I just they were like, oh, sorry to hear it, but I was like, when I heard the poem, I said to myself, I could see Christine writing a poem like this because love is what she demonstrated. Like she called me, came by the house, are you okay, Rich? What a lot of people did not do. And I'm talking about even some family. But it was a hopeful poem for me when I heard it because I'm like, and I guess in a way it's kind of cheating because I know the person, you know what I'm saying, as to where other people would hear it and they would like probably want to meet the person. But I was like, I could see how this came from her heart because this is what she demonstrated. Whenever like I didn't even ask for anything. I was like, I just wanted to come check on me. We made music together, we did all this, but Christine was the one that was there, and I could see this poem coming from her. And that's why I always, if Christine, if you remember, I was always saying, man, I want you to come out with your poetry book, because I just feel like you have soil with all these great seeds that are gonna sprout. That's why I can't wait to see your book. I really cannot wait until your book comes out. Um, I'm excited. Like, I guess I'm not just your brother, I'm a fan. Because Tanya, I don't know if you know, but back in the day, Christine was like I'm trying to find the right word. I guess a critic for or analyst for the music that the group put out.
Okay, nice. Okay.
Yeah, she would listen to some of the songs and be like, "Well, Rich, I think this is nice. I understand what you're saying, but I had a line in there that was corny, and Christine told me it was corny."
That's
So
awesome.
I was like, "Okay, cool." But I think I was a very militant, as and I learned from Christine's style of poetry to mellow it out a little bit. I could have a message but mellow it out, and she kind of helped me with that. Um, because you were talking about some deep stuff, Christine, but you just have a graceful way
Mm-hmm.
of yeah. You guys can see hearing one of her poems makes me talk, so I'm going to be quiet now. Sorry, because I could go on and on. I'm sorry.
No, this is great. Do you ever in your line of therapy, is there ever a time where you can actually tell someone to use writing as a tool?
You know what I do? I actually tell people different things. Like I've told other individuals about how I don't necessarily journal, like I said earlier, like Dear Diary, but I do sort of put out a thought and then I put underneath it different things that, sort of attached to that thought. And it's to help to sort of clear my mind, right? And I tell everybody all of the time, honestly, just get it out of your mind and onto a piece of paper, regardless of what form it's in, right? Because there's just so much noise in our mind, and we don't necessarily see the opposite of that when it's in our mind. Whereas when we write it down and we read it, then we're like, wow, this is absurd. I don't even know why I'm thinking about myself in this way or questioning myself so much,
Right.
and whereas in your mind, you're like, I can't do it. I can't do it. But once you write it down, you're like, you know what? I know I think that I can't do it, but then I have all these other resources that can help me do it. So
Right.
it's actually one of the biggest tools that I utilize in my therapy is, well, let's write it down. What exactly is going on? What are your fears? And just to help people better understand what are some of their triggers, what are some of their sort of mind imagined hurdles, and how do we get past that?
Wow. That's amazing. I love writing. I think writing is the best form of therapy for free anybody can possibly have. That and art, and music, all three of those modalities work for me. I wish more people used it because I mean, too. Also, I think everybody's born with a gift. And a lot of people just don't discover it because they're caught up in a cycle of I gotta just live for today. But if they discovered that gift, they'd find quite often that is usually what leads you to your peacefulness. If you can't afford therapy, and writing is definitely one of them. But I want to go back to your thoughts on the way that people who migrated to this country or just got here, immigrants, whatever word they want to use, are being portrayed like in the media, especially right now. And I don't know why there's this new narrative, but I just want to see what your thought is as a person, as a therapist, but also as someone who's dealt with that feeling of being new to somewhere before. Is there any advice you can give someone?
I don't know that there's any sort of like advice, but what I will say is this, right? Human beings are human beings. And I don't think that anything is different about whether somebody's an immigrant versus whether somebody was born here, whether somebody was not born here. I think that there are various stressors and challenges that we all face.
Right.
And I think that any person is just as likely to, like now it's like, oh, well, people are like committing crimes. Any person is just as likely to commit a crime, whether they're an immigrant or not, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
whether somebody and specifically around, like, let's say somebody's like stealing food or something, right? That's a basic human need, right? So I think all of us, given a circumstance where we're faced with sort of strife and difficulty and not being able to provide for our family, would do what it takes to provide for our family, even give up our
Right.
own life if we have to, right?
Mhm.
And so do I think that specifically there's an immigrant crisis where these like immigrant thugs are coming in and doing all of these awful things to like the citizens of the United States? No, I actually honestly do not think so. That's my opinion. Will studies say differently? I don't know. That still remains to be seen because we're still living in that period. That being said, I think there's a multifaceted lens for all of this. Like, do people have their basic needs met? Is my primary question before we talk about anything else.
Mhm.
Are we sort of helping people to not feel desperate enough to sort of engage in some circumstances? Like, I've always sort of thought that people who sort of go down a pathway of like engaging in difficulty or like engaging in violence or whatever is because they really are left with feeling like they have little to no resources, right?
Mm.
So I genuinely am that person who believes that for the most part people are very good and they want to feel connected and they want to be a part of a community. And
Mhm.
so do they feel part of a community? Are their basic needs met?
Mhm.
And do they feel like the people around them and their surrounding community is going to
Mhm.
help them, or do they feel like they're part of the struggle? And I think if the answer to most of those things is yes, and they're not part of the struggle and they're not beating them down and they're not isolating them and they're not feeling lonely, I think most people want to do good and they want to continue to do good and they want to live a happy, healthy life. Did I?
I agree with that.
You absolutely hit all angles.
I,
Go ahead, Rich.
yeah, I think that was a brilliant point. And to talk further, I'm actually glad that Tanya brought back that part of the discussion up, because what I see right from where I am, the powers that be look at people who are trying to get into this country and the whole immigration thing as a business, right? For a long time, America has used people from outside of this country for cheap labor, for all kinds of things. Then the propaganda that's fed to us in the media is that, oh, the immigrants are coming, But Martin Luther King said it best. I think one of the things that actually got him assassinated when he said, there's certain things we're doing, like policing other countries, but we're guilty of some stuff. And the dynamic that's being created with the immigrants versus the natives, that's being perpetuated. And people in power know how to create situations to get people to respond. Right. People
And during politics time, voting time, near voting time.
during political, they know how to, because listen, this country is a melting pot. Everybody here, as D.L. Hughley said, took a boat. You know what I'm saying? So, like, right? Yeah. But my whole point is that when somebody like Christine is a great example of that, I'm trying to say this the right way. Christine is a great example that what's being portrayed on TV and in the newspapers is not true about immigrants. I have to say that because there are a lot of people who weren't born here that did great things in this country. And Coco Chanel, I think everybody should go see her story.
Yes,
and
she was an orphan like me. I love that.
Right, she went through a traumatizing life.
Yes.
But my whole point is that there are a lot of people who come here to do good, to do better, right? And so I think the whole thing with I think it's purposely done when certain things are not done here for the poor people here. And then things that happen with immigrants, people know that that's going to create friction. And this is just my opinion. I have no proof of it, but sometimes I think it's purposely done because people like to keep people at each other because it kind of helps people stay in control.
Helps
if I
the
know
narrative.
that I actually do believe that. But Christine, I think it's great that you're going to run again. And I think I think you get it. You know what I mean? But sometimes when people fear you, that's a good thing in a way, because it means that you're not. I think people see you as a change in the status quo, maybe a change that they're not ready for. You know what I mean? So,
well, I think it's about time for a change, and I think you'd be fabulous. I would love to be in on that. If you do, I'll help with your social media for free.
Thank you.
That you're just a person that I just like you, and I want to see fresh new blood in all of politics, all of it, from way down the bottom all the way to the top. I think the world would be a better place when people come in with compassion and understanding. I think those who got in, they got comfortable, they got laissez-faire, they got bought out, they got whatever the things are, and now it's like, well, just keep them busy while we do this over here. And that's what I think is going on. They're doing something, and we're over here arguing with each other, saying, "Well, she's Indian, and he's black, and he's Mexican, and he's white, and he's all that stuff is so irrelevant and so not important. It is not important." And all the people who are voting to think that they're going to vote somebody like a 45 back in because it's going to save the day. I hate to tell you, newsflash: no one's going to save the day but us as human beings. That's it. I hate to tell you, no matter who you get in office, we are going to be the ones that save the day by changing our mindsets and our behaviors, and then holding them accountable. That's how we get change. So anyway, I didn't mean to go into politics mode, but you've been awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to come. Any last request is what I always say.
You know what? I will say this last thing about sort of like, I think what's really helpful and what's a sort of private practice of mine is seeing people as community and not competitors. So like what I like to do, and this sort of extends to that whole process of like, well, what's going on with this immigrant crisis, right? I see, and what do they say? 20% of the workforce is immigrants, right? So I think if we see more people as part of our community and see them less as competitors for our resources and try to understand why is there even a scarcity of resources in the first place, because we're one of those countries that's, most resourced. I think that would help us get past some of our biases and help us create a stronger nation. But that's my personal sort of approach to it. But, I just want to say thank you to both of you for allowing me to, share my perspective and my story. And thank you for all the great questions.
We appreciate you, and you're welcome back anytime. When you do run, please come see us again. When you come run, I'll help spread the word, because I don't believe in too many people lately, but you're definitely one of them. And I literally witnessed someone who had nothing to do with politics. And congratulations to Gina and who else? Who we got? We got a few people. Mayor Sendrick. He won against another term. He had didn't win the previous, but this one he won. And that was because they didn't want a cell tower up in our town in Mount Kisco. And they were like, no. So how are we going to do that? Only way to do it is if we run. And they ran and won. But that's how the world has to be now. You have to be the change that you want to see. You can't be saying, well, Christine's going to do it. She can't do it by herself. She needs a whole team of people, a whole community behind her saying, we're going to stand by her on this. That's the only way it gets done. So I appreciate you.
And that's why.
Call. Right.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, no, exactly what you said. I was inspired by a lot of things that Christine did. And that's one of the reasons why I said, you know what, I'm going to be brave enough to go get my master's in social work, which I'm working on now. And because I procrastinated for a little bit. But, Christine is one of those inspirational people, and my wife said the same thing. Like the last time we got together, we had dinner. She said, there's just so many layers to Christine. And, so all I can say is thank you so much for coming to the show.
Yes.
I'm grateful. Hopefully, me and my wife could get some of those great chicken cutlets you make.
So I had for food. I'm going to tease you. I'm going to tease you and say you're supposed to be doing vegan. But listen, so we really do appreciate you. I know your time is valuable. Are you there? Oh, you're there. I think he froze. Okay. He's got the forever smile. He's like, hey, all right. Well, at least we got on a good note. I love it. I'm sorry. These Zooms are so unpredictable, but whatever. But we appreciate you, and make sure you come back and see us again. Hang out with me for 1 minute while we say goodbye to our audience. Norma, we see you out there. Thank you to Joe and listen, Suzanne. Thank you very much. And I can't see who's on YouTube, so I apologize. But thank you very much for our new subscribers. Please make sure you check us out, subscribe. And where can they find you? Are you on social media?
I'm on. Yeah, I'm.
Instagram.
I have Instagram. It's Chris Peters 11.
At Chris.
I think so.
Peters 11. I love the way you say. I think that's what it is. I don't like myself.
I don't. I don't.
And the website.
And yeah, my poetry website, and I'm on Facebook under Christine Anita Peters on Facebook.
On Facebook, Christine. Well, Christine. Oh, my spelling right?
Anita Peters.
ANITA.
Peters. Okay, let's see if I got this right. Okay, so you guys, you see where to find her on here. Okay, I'm going to put on both of these. Got it. They got it. Good. YouTube. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Sis, I want to ask you. Yeah. No, I want to ask you, sis. Do you think Anita would be interested in coming to the show?
Richard has this joke about Anita, and Anita's like my alter ego where I am very strict and very straightforward and very disciplined. Yeah. So, I'm pretty jovial for the most part, but Anita is very sort of, stern. And
Right.
so he
Right.
talks about Anita as if it's an alter ego of mine.
Which
Yeah.
I was like, who's that? I got you. I got you. Well,
I'm
thank
cool
you
with both
so
of them though.
Huh? What you said? You're cool with both of them. Yes.
No, I
Well,
said
thank you.
I'm
All
cool
right,
with both
fine.
of them.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you. And hang out, guys, as I say goodbye to everybody. Oh,
Can
gosh.
I just say thank you to the audience and thank you
Yes,
to both
please
of
do.
you. Thank you so much to the audience for listening, and thank you to both of you for having me.
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate you guys so much.
Mhm.
Hang out for 1 minute while we say goodbye. All right, guys. That's it for. Where's my thing here? Come on. Am I going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? I really am going cuckoo. I'm not seeing my ending. Alrighty then. So something just happened weird. Give me a second, guys. Look, somebody's commenting. Who's that? Oh, Norma says thank you. You're welcome, Norma. Thank you for taking the time to watch.
Yes.
I don't know where my ending is. Did I delete it by accident? That's crazy. There's no way. Oh, that's really well. Well, anyway, happy St. Patrick's Day, and we're gonna end this show, guys. Give me 1 minute. We're gonna end it with this. You guys hang out.
Okay.
And wait, oh, and I can't do it like that, can I? I gotta remove us. This is crazy. Oh my God, something just happened. I have no idea. Hold on 1 second. Just stay
It's
right
the
here in the studio.
government.